I never thought about writing a book until obviously the idea was brought upon me, and I was actually in spring training. Um, my first spring training in Fort Myers with the twins, and I had got a call. I got a call from a agent that deals with authors trying to write a book, and he had an idea of writing one, and the reason why I tell this story is for the simple fact of um, he said he had an author, or he had a writer that could help with the book, and I didn't really know the process. I thought you sit down and you write it all out yourself. So obviously there's a process and there's people to help you do it. But when he told me who the writer was, it really got me excited. It was Tim Cohen. And the reason why it got me excited is because he wrote the Dennis Rodman Bad as a Wannabe book.
Mm.
And that was one of the first books that my father gave to me, like, hey, read this. And I'm like, what? Like my dad gave me this, so like I knew everything about this person. So that's how it started. And as I started, working with Tim, and then that's how we got into the process of just like the proposal and whatnot. And then as things progress, Jason was the guy that um went through with the journey with me, and it was just wonderful to have the experience and go through it.
Can you talk a little more about that journey? Like, what's the process, or at least what was the process like for you to write a book?
Mhm.
Because it's a lot. It's a hell of a
Yeah,
lot of work.
it's a lot. So it's really just like with this day of technology, it was like now. It was like Jason was like, okay, Tuesday at 6 o'clock. We're gonna get on and we're gonna talk for a couple hours, and he's just gonna ask me a bunch of questions, and I'm really just basically telling him my life story, and then and he's recording it, and we're just having a conversation. And that took months. That took months
Mm.
to where we just we would meet every week or every other week, and we would just talk, and then we kind of created the chapters. I think just talking about the field training, uh um the field training experience, that took a little bit longer because I'm going back, some of the traumatic experiences and some of the things that, I remember. And then I'm like, oh, this too, thing, and add things as we go. But also, then just when everything is compiled together, kind of just looking over things and saying, yeah, I don't know if I want to say that, or I don't know about this or that. And, that took months. I think, I couldn't even, I think what, 4 or 5 months. It just, but it was just constant meeting and just kind of just telling your story and refining everything.
So one of the great things about this book is that it's your story, but it's more than your story. One of the things that struck me when I was reading it was that so much of it is about the power of place, in
Yeah.
particular the North Side.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
as the son and grandson of North Siders, I know how strong people's attachment is to the North Side. And we don't, as a historian of the Twin Cities, I know we don't actually have a lot of first-person accounts of North
Yeah.
Siders of any sort from
Yeah.
across a wide range of time. They're hard to come by.
Yeah.
For you, why was sharing not just your experiences, but your kind of characterizations and your thoughts about the North Side, those experiences and perspectives, why was it so important to you to share those in this book?
Just because, just to show the wealth and the prize of Northside. And so many times we talk about the negative things that go on in this neighborhood, but to show that I'm a product of this wonderful neighborhood in this city, and to showcase that on a national worldwide level, I think it's important to me. It even goes like to me coaching, where I could go coach in any school I want. I can go to further out. I can go to a suburb and I can coach wherever, but it means more to me because I know this is the city, this is the school that brought me to where I'm at and helped raise me, help raise my family. So it just means more to me to showcase the treasure of us being Northsiders.
Absolutely. And one of the ways that the book does that, of course, is by not just talking about your experiences as a police officer, but by talking about sports and your
Hmm.
experiences as an athlete and as a coach.
Yeah.
I think that's actually one of the better parts of the book is the ways in which you talk about the role of high school sports and education, your own education coming
Hmm.
up, but
Yeah.
in, of course, the way in which you are helping guide youth coming up as the coach of football at North High, the way it shapes character, the way it shapes the way you see the world. Why was it so important for you to put these experiences together, to put your experience as a cop together with your experiences as a coach? Because the book kind of moves back and forth and is actually, your voice is a connective thread tying those two distinct experiences together. Why was it so important for you to connect those two things?
Well, because I used so football has always been a mentorship for me. With the struggling relationships between police and community, um, being in law enforcement, it was a way for me to service my community. And this is really big on just the service part of servicing your community. So I figured where I came from as a police officer, I'm a servant to the community. How can I give back? Well, let me give back from what was given to me. And so I had to, as I was always embedded in the community, but I had to further put myself into it and help, help the kids and help people in this community as well, not just be somebody that works here. So, like you say, like if you're gonna talk about it, be about it. So, like I can't represent somewhere and not, but not being here to try to, make some type of difference. So, I think the coaching piece was a way for me to continue to develop the relationships in the neighborhood, but then build the trust and continue to serve.
So that's one way in which these two roles, cop and coach, fed off of each other, that kind of building trust with people in the neighborhood, trying to build trust with families, building trust with students, building trust maybe with fellow officers. What are other ways in which those roles as cop and coach fed off each other in your experience?
Well, that was, I mean, trust, and that's the main thing. Um, but it also helps you realize that every person in the community is somebody is a loved one to somebody. So I think the coaching aspect it helped me out so tremendously because you would know that you have to deal with some of your kids' family members, and then in that eye, when as negative as law enforcement can be, when you're dealing with people in your community that you neither grew up with or you have a relationship with, they see you as, well, yeah, you wear the uniform, but he's this, he's that, and that helped. Like, oh man, I hate cops and da 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 da. I don't. Oh, but that's coach. So let me talk to him because I already know how coach is. So I think the coaching piece was just it helped me continue to be a genuine person in the community.
What is it like now to continue to be the head football coach at North Community High School and to not be on the Minneapolis Police Force, given the significance of that and the way the book lays out the significance of
Yeah,
that
yeah.
relationship?
I talk about it a lot. Honestly, uh, if I didn't have the opportunity to coach, um, I would never even consider leaving the police department as far as, with the job with the twins. So if the twins said, hey, we want you to work here, but you can't coach, um, I wouldn't even thought twice of it. And also too, if I'm still a SRO, it doesn't matter what organization comes to me, I'm still a SRO. So I think just being a SRO, not being a SRO is what kind of pushed me to, to seek something else. But I will say not being a police officer is probably a little bit more of a disadvantage for me coaching because now I don't know everything that's going on in the school. Um, and I would say being in the school as SRO is kind of a little bit challenging to coach now, just because then I could classrooms, people could come to my office, and I was closer to the kids. And not saying that I can't do that now, but it was just a different dynamic when I was SRO.
So let's kind of pivot here, especially because this is an audience that is, of course, really interested in public safety in particular. And in your role as the school resources officer at North Community High School, that was obviously a thing you did for a long time, and it was part and parcel, as you've just described, of your experience. As a leader in that school, as a mentor in that school, as a coach in that school. Can you talk about your trajectory from police academy to school resource officer? Kind of like what it was like and how you figured out for yourself that being a school resource officer was the way you wanted to be a police officer?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as the book pretty much spells out, had a real difficult time during FTO. Um,
That's field
just
training.
field training, yeah. So we call it FTO. So field training, the FTO is really the field training officer, but everybody calls field training FTO. Um, so I had a real difficult time. I knew some of the experiences that I had with some of the FTOs that I did have, that I knew that I just wasn't going to police that way. I wanted to obviously be the type of police officer like my father and my uncle. But I kind of just played my part, because and when I mean play my part, I mean as far as uh, working patrol, working enough years on patrol to be able to move to a unit. And so I did that, but also I realized, that I got involved with Police Activities League, and that's how the coaching piece came about. Because I remember before I was a cop, and as I was a community service officer, my father would, he would coach, some of the kids at PAL. So then I knew growing up, like with the SROs and my dad and Tony working the basketball games and the football games and stuff. So I already knew, like, when I became a cop and I was done with probation, I was like, I'm doing all of that. Timberwolves, Vikings, Twins, you name it. So um after just being on patrol, it was, yeah, working off duty at North High as not a SRO, but just an off duty officer. And once I started that, I'm like, yeah, man, this is, because obviously seeing my dad and my uncle do it, and I'm like, yeah, I can. This is what I want to do. I want to be the SRO. And like I said, I got an opportunity, and I just went with it.
So you just described the significance of family in shaping your trajectory. And of course, the book talks a fair bit about your family and the close friends that are family as well. And,
Hmm.
all the ways we think about kin and kinship and how important people like that are in our lives, and certainly were important in your life. What is it, what is it that leads so many people in a single family to become police officers, right? I mean, uh, so many members of your family
Hmm.
served on the Minneapolis Police Force one
Yeah,
time or another. What
yeah.
is it that takes a whole family in that direction?
I think just just the reputation, but being pride, Northside pride. I mean, like I said, we all grew up in this neighborhood. For some weird reason, my sister decided to go to Henry. To this day, I don't even know why, but all of us are Polars: mom, dad, uncles, everybody. My sister decided to go to Henry, but that's another topic.
Indeed.
But yeah, she so I think it was just, we always wanted to be where we came from, and help out where we, just help our people, because, my father-in-law still lives in this neighborhood, um, rest in peace to my grandfather, my grandmother. They both all lived in these neighborhoods until they, till they pass. So, I know my dad and my uncle were like, my mom and daddy, they in this neighborhood. So, we definitely got to do what we can to make sure that we're stay connected and protected in their fans and in our and their families and stuff like that. So, it's just a sense of the pride of where you come from, and when you say you're a product of the environment, so you're a product of the North Side.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you suggest in the book, not everybody on the force has an approach like that. One of
Yeah.
the more compelling parts of your book is when you're describing the unrest that followed the murder of George Floyd. And as you're kind of musing on that in retrospect, you talk about your experience of this kind of pervasive attitude on the Minneapolis police force among so many other fellow officers, um, that people, especially people who live in poorer neighborhoods,
Hmm.
somehow owe cops, um, that they somehow, should be thankful that the cops are there. Could you
Yeah.
talk more about that? Because that's different than what you just described.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've, one of the main points that I wanted to put to paper was that we have overlooked the site of service, like, community service and service within the community, and you know, we're peace officers serving to protect, serving and protecting. And I think we lost sight of that, to where it's a period where people are coming to work saying, well, you should be lucky I'm coming. And it's like, no, it's not. No, like they're calling us because that's what they're supposed to do, and we're supposed to come and help them. So I think losing sight of the service to the community. And that's why the mindset got to where it was. And I said it in the book that and somebody just asked me this question today. A player, one of the players from the Twins, literally asked me this question today. He said, "What was your take on Derek Chauvin, and do you think he was racist?" And I said to him with a straight face, like I've said a bunch of times, I said, I think this was more about control than race. I think the more that you say and tell a police officer what not to do, the more he wanted to prove to you that he was in control of the situation.
It's uh, it's not an accident that you mentioned control, because you talk about this question of control and individual police officers trying to control situations or the need to control.
Yeah.
Um, and you talk about that sometimes, especially with some white officers, that combination of the need to control along with a fear of black people.
Hmm. Hmm.
Can you talk more about this, the kind of experiences you had or things that you saw that led you to include this insight in the book?
Just going through training and just having a voice in certain situations. And I know I talked about a situation where one of my FTOs, we're going to a call and he's telling me, do this, 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 and this, and then he's lining up how I should do it. And then when we get there and I handle the situation, he gets nitpicky on it's not exactly how he told me to do it. It was still done correctly, but just having a sense of, hey, I'm going to tell you what to do, and this is how I want you to do it, and you're going to do it my way, or else, in my way is the only way to do it, or this is how we've always done it. So just being in situations where just working with people and saying, well, I'm in control now. A prime example was just just yesterday, the Tyreek Hill body cam, when you see the officer going, you deal with me now. This is you're dealing with me. I'm in control. Like, like that. Those are the situations you talk about. So, um, it takes the knowledge of knowing how to navigate those situations and deal with people appropriately so that you can have the great outcome.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You're describing control not only between officers and citizens, but actually between officers and officers. So it sounds like that control thing is really at the
Mhm.
center for so many officers of
Yeah.
identity. What
Hmm.
about the fear of Black people that some white officers have, and how that feeds certain forms of control to emerge at moments?
I look at it this way. You can't be afraid of Black people and people of color and work in Minneapolis when the population is majority of people of color. So the thing about it is, like, if you base your profession off of fear, you're in the wrong profession. If you take the time to take in consideration that you have actually more control of a situation if you treat people decent opposed to being hostile and giving them energy that's negative. Like, and sometimes, like, I've seen it plenty of times where, me and Todd Kurthman, one of my ex-partners, we've said, hey, we got it. We've told cops in a situation, what, we got it, we'll take care of it, don't worry about it, we'll handle it, just because that's the whole de-escalation piece. But you still see that in with the George Floyd situation. Um, maybe Derek was afraid that George would get up and do something to him. Um, but we'll never know because he didn't give him a chance to. So
No, no. Um, Kind of around these questions of control and in particular fear of Black people and people of color among some white officers on the Minneapolis force and frankly police forces around the country. One of the things you do in the book is you describe racism on the MPD, not just through your own experience, but through your observations of it, not just by watching cops interact with citizens, but watching cops interact with cops on the force. And that you're very specific in terms of how, in your experience, in your perspective, you want to characterize that racism. You talk about it not being as much about outright hatred of people of color. Um, I think the phrase you use is that some white officers engage in, quote, enduring refusal to understand, end quote. So
yeah.
talk to us about that. Unpack that for us, if you would. It's white officers' enduring refusal to understand, because obviously you put a lot of thought into that particular turn of phrase.
Well, so it's simple. It's I'm not that. Why do I have to do with that? Why do I have to basically, I wouldn't say bow down. So not understanding is, so if I'm not Black, why do I have to love or cater to Black people more than myself? And that's what I mean by that. So for the simple fact of, just having a conversation about the Black national anthem, and then you have people say, well, why do we have to sing the Black national anthem? Why do we have to love the Black national anthem? We're not Black. Why do we have to love Black people more than we love ourselves? Well, just because it's not about you loving Black people more than you. It's about you understanding what Black people have been through in this country. That's the failure to understand, because if it doesn't relate to you, yeah, I don't have to, I don't, but it's about what we've been through. And you always want to say equality. It's, well, get us equal first. Get us, we ain't never been equal. Let's get us there first, then we can talk about equality and things like that. So I failure to understand, like, not every person is characterized as the same. Not every person is a hoodlum and a thug coming from North Minneapolis. But and people need to understand that, and not every person that you're dealing with out on the streets, you got to treat them like they crap, because not everybody's a suspect. Not everybody's a suspect. People need you.
So this enduring refusal, again, that kind of incredible turn of phrase that you use in the book, this enduring refusal of many white officers to understand, what changes that from your perspective? How if that is kind of structural or systemic, or it's at least it has enough of a hold that it's affecting kind of things that are bigger than individual officers, however you want to talk about that, how does that change from your perspective? How does that enduring refusal, not forgetting, not,
Hmm.
but it's a willful decision.
That's a great question. I, I, w- I wish I had the answer for. I think with education and knowledge, that's the only way that things can be better. Just like us studying for a test, we just got to be more knowledge about it and kind of understand what the circumstance is. Like we talk, we talk about the things that are traumatic in our lives, understanding, why, you know, if you see George Floyd's name at a baseball event, why that can be traumatic not only for black people but white people. It can be traumatic for a lot of people because it brings people back to the space of where they were at during that time. So it could be good or bad. It could be traumatic in so many ways. You got to take in consideration how it can affect other people. And I think that's the biggest thing. When you realize how things affect other people, you got to take in consideration.
And a great example of that in the book, of course, is when you describe being called out during the unrest, and your kind of personal experience during the unrest, because I think it's easy for people to think about, officers having all this power because of that tradition of control, because of that tradition of fear.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily what you describe on those nights when you were
Mhm.
out. Talk about
Yeah.
that if you would.
Yeah. Uh, up until pulling up in front of that pawn station, I thought I was in control. Me and Tyler Edwards, and when we got out, we definitely knew that we weren't. So
And this was on the
uh,
South Side.
yeah, it was on South Side, 28th and the 28th and Lake. Yeah,
Hmm.
28th and Lake, pretty much kitty corner from the third precinct. Yeah, and that's traumatic. That piece and that intersection is traumatic for me, and I've been back a couple of times. But just even seeing just footage of that area, it made me realize that I wasn't in control. And one of the first times in law enforcement, I realized that I didn't have control of the situation. I didn't think I could charm my way and talk my way out of this unrest. And I literally thought that I would not make it through the night. And that was, like I said, it was just something like it was the worst feeling ever. I didn't think that I would make it because now it's paranoia. It's, oh, what's coming? Like and for 4 hours you're thinking that straight. Like, is somebody gonna shoot me from the roof? Like, you don't know. So um that put things a lot of things in perspective of, well, okay, yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen.
And yet you had to go out the next night too, right?
No,
It was more than the one
yeah,
night. Like, yeah, like
yeah,
you go home, you get a little rest, but then
yeah,
it's
yeah.
all hands on deck for the
There
next
you
few
go.
days.
There
Yeah.
you go. There you go. And it was, um, it, it, yeah, it was an experience that I would never want anybody to go through. But you knew you had to be there because this is what you signed up for. But just thinking back to it, it was just a situation where um you understood why people were felt the way that they felt. It really wasn't too much you could do about it either.
Yeah.
So it just, you had to stay there and you had to just take it. So yeah, that yeah, in a nutshell.
So, one of the other things that I think is really important about this book is that there's a whole genre of cops who write books.
Hmm.
And it's a genre that's been around for decades now. And it's, there's the thin blue line, and cops don't snitch on each other. And I'm going to tell you what goes on behind the scenes. I'm going to tell you
Hmm.
what it's really like. I'm going to tell you about all the things that you think are happening. And
Hmm.
it's a tell-all kind of memoir. And your
Yeah,
book is not a tell-all kind of memoir. You have a very different approach.
yeah,
Can you
yeah.
talk more about why you decided not to do that? Or maybe that was off the table. Maybe it never crossed your mind to do that. But it's almost a trap that's very easy for an officer who's talking about their experiences to fall into in a book. And you don't do that in this book. Why?
Just because, I was, being honest and kind of telling my story. But I still have, friends in law enforcement. I still have friends in this police department, and I have a sister, father, and but I wanted to tell the truth about my experience, but I and no and no means wanted to burn bridges. So I didn't want to, because just to be honest, don't know how the career of personal, private security in the private sector working for a team. I wasn't really sure how, if that was a long goal, and I wanted to be, obviously, but so it was just kind of being smart and having common sense, telling, and talking about what I know, but not taking the opportunity to bury and to be messy. That's something that my grandma would always say, being
Mhm.
messy, or tell a story. And that was, we always say tell a story, meaning that we weren't allowed to say lie. So we
Mm.
weren't allowed to say the word lie. So tell a story. So I didn't want to be that person telling the story, which I did tell a story, but I just didn't want to lie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So has there been any backlash? Like, have there been any bridges that are burned? Have you gotten any pushback from
No,
colleagues,
no,
former friends,
n-
etc.?
no, nope. And the best thing about it is, a lot of people that do know me, they know my personality. I think a lot of cops went to go get the book to see to see if it was like, who is he talking about, who is he bashing. And I actually, and I've been honest, a lot of cops have come to me and was like, man, who you talking about here? And I'm like,
Mm.
hey, it's this person. They're like, yeah, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, yeah. So it's, but no, and if so, if life is short and precious. If guys want to have a beef on me telling the world what I went through, hey, that's their problem, because it's what I went through.
Got it, got it. Will, is there a way I can ask one more question before we turn it over to you?
Or sure. Yep. Go ahead.
Thanks for your patience. I wanted to make sure that we got this in too, because there's more in this book than just, it doesn't just end with George Floyd. It doesn't just end with the 2022 North high school football team. You were a member of the community safety work group that the mayor put together in late 2021 and 2022. And this is a work group of people from across the city, many different
Hmm.
walks of life, different perspectives, different politics,
Hmm.
different identities.
Hmm.
And of course, you were part of that group that, issued a report on what the future of public safety in Minneapolis should be. What was the most important thing that you learned from your work as a member of that community safety working group in 2021 and 2022?
Well, the most important thing was that we all had the same, passion to make things right for the community and make policing right. And you know, we may have different political opinions or whatnot, but collectively we all had the same thing to make this right. And it was easier to work with this group because I could give the perspective from law enforcement. They'd be like, hey, let's no off duty and no da da da. I'm like, wait, hold on. Like, uh, that's not a good idea because look at this, and this. If you saying this means that this person can't do this, and that, and bring in that perspective. And they were like, oh, well, I guess we never thought about that. So I think it was just a good, because collectively we all had the same, working with the mayor as well. We all had the same ideas of, hey, how do we make things better? And the biggest thing that I got out of the experience was I wanted to emphasize to everybody and to the police department that um, this should be, when it comes to law enforcement and with the troubles that we've had, we should be better at teaching. We should be better at training and being effective in developing good police officers, opposed to saying he's not good enough, she's not good enough, take a hike. There's no system in place to say if a person is struggling, if a person is has a FTO that does not listen to them and is not teaching them what they need to teach, what outlet does that person have to reach out to somebody and say, hey, you know what? I'm having an issue. What can I do? How can I get better? Opposed to being graded by somebody that could be disgruntled or somebody, whatever. There's no system in place to help people succeed in field training.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Michael, maybe you can come back to some of your questions here, but I want to give the audience a chance. I've got 3 questions. So the first one's going to take a little context, and maybe, Michael, you can help with this. Someone in the Q&A talking about it wasn't just white officers. He says he's a resident of the north side of Minneapolis, not just white officers, but also black officers who showed a lot of disrespect towards citizens. And after George Floyd was murdered, we certainly heard this a lot, right? We need more African-American officers. But Michael, in your own studies, going back a ways, the Minneapolis Police Department is probably more diverse now than it's ever been, or a lot more diverse, certainly. I don't know if you've studied that at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're talking in 2020 or 2024, absolutely. More racially diverse, more women, more people from different gender backgrounds, the whole thing. No question.
Yeah. So the question, Charles, why didn't that work? Why, more diverse police department should have led to better outcomes. And, soon after George Floyd was killed, Tyree Nichols was killed in Memphis, 5 black officers beating this African-American man to death. Do you have any insight on that, on why that solution didn't work as well as we hoped, perhaps?
Well, that's a great question. Great question. I think, just talking about Minneapolis in general, I think what's recommended is having more people, minorities from this community, from this city, working in the police department. I think that's the push. And I know they mentioned that some of the black officers were disrespectful as well. Yeah, yeah, it wasn't just white, it was just black too. Yeah. But once again, that goes back to pride, Northside pride. That goes to Northside pride, and having people that are from the neighborhood appreciate it and handle it a certain way because they're a product of it.
Were there any downsides that you were from this North Minneapolis and policing the North Minneapolis area as well? Did you ever run into some like, oh man, I know these folks too well, and I'm seeing them at the grocery store, and I'm seeing them at on the street?
Not really. I looked at it, when you're dealing with people in their worst times, whether they're dealing with a death or them going to jail, at the least you can do is treat them with dignity. If you do that and treat them decently, that experience, they remember that. So I've had a situation where I had to take a dude to jail, and he had a bunch of narcotics. Took him to jail, and I'm like, I got to whatever. And he understood. The dude come out, and I'm in the neighborhood at the grocery store or something like that. And the dude was like, man, that's the dude that put me in a joint. He's like, man, but you treated me right, man. He's like, man, I appreciate you, brother. Hey, that's all I could do. So, nowadays, I don't have those type of interactions because, I don't have to worry about that. But, early on in my career, I had those situations, and I was kind of worried, if somebody would try to retaliate. But then I got back to, well, hey, I'm not treating nobody like crap. If I got to fight with somebody, I'm fighting with them to get them, under control or whatever. But I'm not. I don't have to worry about going somewhere and somebody doing something to me because I'm not treating people that way.
Our next question came to me about the Police and Black Men Project, and I put it in the chat. Could you talk a little bit about that and what it's all about?
Wow. Well, there's I'm pretty sure there's some fine gentlemen a part of this group that is here listening as well. And the Police and Black Men Project is actually it's been in existence, I think, 7 years. And it's a program, it's a project, it's a group that I'm just blessed to be a part of. My dad was one of the originating members of there. Obviously, Justin and Doc, they're all a part of the group as well. And I was brought in within the last year to be a part of this wonderful project. And really, it just amplifies the importance of the strength of police and community. And then you have so many dynamics within the group of people that um, are all walks of life in this group, but have experience as men, as fathers, and as of everything. And we kind of learn from each other. We're all brothers, and we all love each other, but we can all learn from each other. And I think it definitely, this last year that I've been a part of this project, it has definitely helped me be a better man and a better father, better coach, better person, to be acquainted and be with other great men in this group.
So the last question from the audience was the field training officer situation, and you mentioned it a couple different times. And Michael, I don't know about you, but my students are always really surprised to find out that Derek Chauvin was a field training officer, even though he had, 17 misconduct charges against him. And they're just baffled on how this could have happened, where a rogue officer becomes people's boss and becomes the one that's actually training them in. So maybe Charles, just one or two ideas on that seems like a major problem with the Minneapolis Police Department. If good people aren't training in officers, you're not going to get good officers.
So yeah, and that's yeah, I agree with you. You got to take this in for consideration. When you say FTO, a field training officer, not every time is a recruit riding with their assigned field training officer every night. There could be a time where that FTO or the trainer and that officer, they have the schedules matched, but that officer is not working at night because he called in sick. There you have Derek Chauvin. Now he fills in because he's on that car or he's on there. He's got higher seniority. Well, you have the recruit for the night. So people look at it like, well, how is he training somebody? It always happens, and it will always happen because you can't always be with that person all the time. So sometimes you're there scheduled to work. That person has something else to do, and you got to ride with a senior officer. And those are situations. The biggest thing is having people that want to do this, because so far when I came in as an officer years ago, it was, well, who wants to boot? Who wants to recruit for the night? Like a raising hands. Oh, I'll take them. You know, that should be a system. It should be just like, working in the schools. This shouldn't be a punishment. It should be who wants to be here to teach, and it has to be like a coaching perspective. You got to be the head coach, and you got to delegate people to help coach and get these players better or the officers better.
Thank you. Another question in from the Q&A. So we're 4 years into making public safety reforms, many recommended by the task force you were on. How hopeful are you that we're on the right path? All right, are we on the 10-year plan? Is this longer?
That's a great question. We got some work to do. I think, and I know people discourage the talk about it, but we let's increase the numbers first, then we can start doing more work. When
And the
you're
numbers of
short,
officers.
yeah,
Okay.
numbers of officers, and the getting the police department's numbers increased so that now we can have more, instead of giving so much to a smaller amount. I mean, I wasn't in a police department with 500 people, or I don't know what the number is. I'm just saying I was in the police department where there was almost 900 cops. So I couldn't even imagine just working shorthanded now, how it is now. But I think the more in some of the load can be, taken off, and we can start to develop better practices. But I will say the chief, Minneapolis chief, he's doing a good job in my opinion, and he's trying to make things right, and he listens. He listens. I mean, he don't even have to listen to me, but he does. But he listens, and I think we're in a step in the right direction, but we still have a ways to go.
Just to follow up on that question, from your perspective, do you think that the coming federal consent decree will make a difference in terms of getting the changes that community wants from the Minneapolis police?
There's no choice. Has to. Yeah. So yes. Yeah. That's a definite yes. And there's no choice. No choice there. They shall.
Question from the Q&A. Charles, how about recruiting more women? Or how about recruiting more people coming from other professions? We've heard this, that there should be a way to laterally enter the Minneapolis Police Department. What are your thoughts on those?
I think so too. I just think that the Minnesota requirements are so they're a lot different from other states. I think that if you didn't have to go through so much to be licensed as a police officer in Minnesota, that you probably might have a lot of more people that would want to switch their careers. I think if we had different opportunities, just like other departments in across the country, I think you can increase people's interest. You know, Kansas City has a reserve program. We have police reserves here in Minneapolis, but their reserve program actually has cops that are retired, and all they have to do is pretty much like buyback work quarterly. You know, they have to work for the city 2 or 3 shifts a month or something like that, and they can keep their badge, they keep their gun, and they can work any off-duty job they want to. And these people have regular jobs. But just having that, and their reserve officers, the uniforms look the same. So I said, just things to increase. I mean, just certain things like that can help out too, to where you got regular people that have regular, other professions. Hey, you know what? I'll do that. If I could have to work a couple shifts a month, and I could still keep my badge and gun, and I could still be a teacher or professor or whatever, it's a good incentive. So, those are some of the ideas I recommend.
Another question from the Q&A. In the book, you wrote about the positives of having officers at school, right? We've heard lately about a lot of the negatives of having SROs. Do you think that SROs help with community trust as well as safety?
Absolutely. And I'm the product of it. You got to understand, if you build the relationship and you rebuild and you're strong in the community, you as an SRO, you can take everything that people complain about out of the picture. So prime example is, if something's going on and something happens on your block and you don't really want to call the police, and because you don't trust them, the one place nobody's going to realize what's going on is if you come into the school and there's a cop in there. So coming into the police station is a lot different than coming to the school office and telling me what's going on. And people utilize that a lot. I'm talking about witnessing homicides or whatever. It's like, I ain't gonna come to the police station, but you know what, Officer Adams, I'll go to his office and we'll talk. I'll talk to whoever I need to in his office, because we're in a school. So people outside, all they see is people going into the school. So I think that helped. Also, it was huge. I had a white Malibu, unmarked vehicle that I parked in the front, and that was such a deterrent. It was, some school districts have squad cars, but people knew that if that white car was parked in front of that school, I was somewhere on that campus. Sometimes I wasn't even there. I just had to get picked up and I go somewhere else. So those were the small things. After school rotation, people that were hanging outside or around the corner, I would watch them from the window. And when the bell rang at 3 o'clock, they're right across the street. As soon as 3 o'clock hit, they 2 blocks down. Because they know I'm like, nope, 2 blocks away. Let's go. They knew. So they knew that they just, so it was a deterrent, and it helped, and it was a good resource, especially in North Minneapolis.
Another question from the chat. We've heard a lot about accountability for police officers. Do you think that pressing charges against officers, whether it be Derek Chauvin or something less serious, is a good idea? And is it that big of a deal that Derek Chauvin was convicted in terms of bettering behavior by officers going forward?
I think depending on the circumstance, I think if it is out of the policy and it's out of the scope of of your duties, I think it's appropriate. Um, but if it's in good faith of what your job duties are, I don't agree with that. But as far as the whole world has seen this image, tons of times. Um, there's you're in control of the situation, so trying to prove when it comes to Derek Chauvin and George Floyd, trying to prove to people that you are in control when you know you are um that is the behavior that is gotten our country to where we are right now in the eyes of how they look at law enforcement.
Last question. As everyone in the audience probably knows, Charles now works for the Twins. What is happening with the Twins, and what can be done to turn this around ASAP?
That's a good question. A lot of guys hurt. I was with Max Kepler and Jose Miranda and Austin Martin earlier today, and man, dudes just trying to get better, man. I mean, it's guys just got to get healthy. I think once we get healthy, we'll be good. And um, those are great dudes. I mean, them is like all little brothers to me, man. I enjoy being with those guys. So hopefully pick it up. I'm gonna head over to the stadium after here, and hopefully we can, if they play, or if they play on time, and get a win tonight.
Michael, I'm going to turn it back to you, and then we'll go back to Charles for last words.
Okay. Well, I just have one last question for you, Charles, and it's the hardest question. It's the $1,000,000 question. But I think given all that you've shared with us tonight, you're a great person to ask this question. And that is, for you, given all these different experiences that you've had, growing up North Side, going to North, the sports piece, the coaching piece, the time as a cop, the time as an SRO, the time as an officer during the unrest. What does public safety look like to you?
Mm.
What does public safety look like? Like you're driving down the street or walking down the street. What does it look like?
At this current time, right now, the state that we're in, I think public safety right now looks like reaction. I react. You call me, here I come. In reaction to a call, response, and then uh, de-escalating and diverting, cautionary, to stay out of trouble. That's what it is, and to me, I think that's more dangerous. No, no, and less proactivity. Just because the fear of if I do something wrong, what may happen, and that's a dangerous state right now. So we see a lot of law enforcement guys are saying, "Hey, I'm going to come to work, and I'm gonna take my calls, and I'm gonna go home, and that's what we're gonna do." And that needs to change.
All right. Thank you so much, Charles. Everybody should
Thank
check
you. It
out
was
the book,
my
Twin
pleasure.
Cities.
Yes, thank you so much, Michael and Charles. This was a great conversation. I appreciate it a lot. Thanks from the Minnesota Justice Research Center. Thanks to the audience. The Q&A was really active, and we really appreciate that. So yeah, everyone check out the book. And we'll see you at our next event. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.